Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Company of Heroes developer live stream for November. Very excited to have everyone here that's joining us live and to everyone that's watching this after the fact. My name is John. I am one of the community managers here on the team. And again, just very, very happy to have two of the gameplay designers joining me today to talk about the Wehrmacht. So we're going to be talking about the faction in quite a bit of depth, just like we did with the U.S. forces last month. If you haven't checked out that video, please go and give it a watch. A lot of fun discussions there. But we're going to have some fun discussions today. So let's do a quick round of introductions. Jason, do you want to introduce who you are? I know you were here last time, but maybe folks didn't check that out. So who are you and what do you do on the team? And maybe some folks might recognize these faces from the community as well, as these were both community hires. So Jason, who are you?
Yeah, hello. I am a gameplay designer on the Relic team, and I am working on balance. So lots there. And yeah, I did come from the community. I was known as Turnation, if anyone recognized that. But yeah, old hand in the community, played a bit, but yeah.
Awesome. And Marco, I think this is your first time joining us on a broadcast like this. You made a bit of a name for yourself in the community as well before we hired you on. So who are you? What do you do on the game? And what did you do in the community?
Yeah, that's correct, actually. Hey, everyone. I'm Marco, one of the gameplay designers on this amazing game. You might know me, actually, from some of the community websites I've been part of. I don't know, 15 years. Actually, big fan of the game, and yeah, it's good to be here, actually. So glad we're doing this stream.
Awesome. So folks, if you need to stay up to date with all of the Company of Heroes news that's going to be coming fast and furious in the next couple of months before launch, the best place to do that is on your social platform of choice, at Company of Heroes. Follow us there. You can also join co-development by signing up at companyofheroes.com. You'll also find our official forums there. Join the Discord server, discord.gg/Company of Heroes, or follow us right here, twitch.tv/Relic Entertainment. So you can find out when we're going live and doing awesome streams just like this, or find the VODs on YouTube as well after the fact, so you can watch those whenever you get a second. So what are we talking about today? Like I said, it's going to be all Wehrmacht all the time. We're going to be doing a real deep dive on the faction. We'll be looking at gameplay. We've got two matches lined up here that we're going to review. We're going to be talking about their main roster, their battle groups, and so much more. We'll also be talking about some of the big changes that this faction has seen, and answering some of your questions along the way. So if you're here live, make sure you throw those questions in the chat, and we'll get to what we can. And of course, we're going to be talking about how does the Wehrmacht actually work in multiplayer. So please ask those questions, and we've got so much to cover. So before we even jump into our discussion here, if you haven't seen it, I'm just going to play our latest Wehrmacht trailer just to get you hyped up and to set up our discussion for today. So check that out, and we'll be right back.
The Wehrmacht. Defensive, battle-hardened, intimidating. Once they get a foothold on the field, their wide array of defensive tools, structures, and the determination to crush anything that stands in their way will make them impervious to the Allied assaults. The Wehrmacht rely on several formidable infantry units and heavy armored vehicles. With enough experience, they become capable of prodigious feats, both on the offensive and when holding key objectives. The German war machine starts as a defensive behemoth, and once its gears are in motion, it becomes nearly unbreakable.
Awesome. I really love that trailer. I think it always gets me excited when I'm watching it. So Jason, much like we did with the U.S. forces last month, let's maybe start with the big picture, and then we can get into sort of the nuts and bolts about the Wehrmacht. I'm curious, how did the team approach the design of the Wehrmacht this time around?
Yeah. So at a very high level, we still maintain the same pillars that we did for all of the other factions. So we did have a huge emphasis on diversity this time around. So we wanted to build a new German army that had a lot of options and had a lot of play patterns and a lot of different builds. So hopefully we'll be able to show that off in some of the games that we play today. But in terms of other things, the good old pillars of the Wehrmacht return. So we're doing them as a advanced, but also a good, defensive faction. Their another emphasis is that they are battle hardened and that they are very specialized. So in contrast to the Americans that are very versatile, very able to do all kinds of different things with the same units, it's kind of the other way around with the Germans, where you have these very powerful units, but they're definitely more specialized.
Gotcha.
And we'll dive into a little bit more of the specifics of how we kind of achieve that. But
of course, yeah. So Marco, maybe I'll throw this question to you. I'm curious, what were some of our big goals with this faction in Company of Heroes 3, and how that might differ from what the team might have been trying to do with the Wehrmacht in past iterations of our games?
Yeah, sure. So this time around, we know that as well as for Americans, this is the third time we are building this German faction. So we tried to spice it up a little bit, bringing some cool new units. But at the same time, we want players to feel familiar when they play the faction. So we definitely wanted to retain some of the core elements of the army, like the HMG mainline infantry combo that you can play from the early game. And we definitely wanted also to give them more options. So one of the goals that we had was actually to give them more flexibility when it comes down to teching, but also to have those specialized units that you really have to invest into. So you need to make the right choices when it matters.
Gotcha. So, Jason, I'm curious about where you feel the Wehrmacht kind of fits in Co3's multiplayer when we compare them to some of the other factions that are on offer.
So I guess one of the big things is the Wehrmacht is a faction that's really good at fighting their opponents up front. So they're the army where they want to fix you in place and then destroy you. So in contrast to the Americans, that's a lot of emphasis on mobility, on flanking, about finding the right engagements. The Germans, to find the right engagements for them to really get the most power out of their units, they want to manipulate where you are, keep you in place, and then just fight you up front. So they're the heavyweight boxer that will just punch you in the face, compared to like the Americans that kind of want to dance around the ring a little.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's maybe hop into our first match today and look at the faction in a bit more depth. So folks, please just keep in mind that this still is a developer build that we're going to be looking at. So this isn't quite final. We've got bugs to fix and more polish to add. And again, that's one of the reasons why we delayed the game a couple months, or that we moved the launch date. So I think this first one that we're going to be looking at is a 1v1. And Jason, I believe this is a match. This is a match that you played against another one of our recent community hires, Darren, aka Mirage Flaw. So we're gonna be looking at this from your perspective as the Wehrmacht in this 1v1. What else do I want to say before we actually jump into this? I guess much like we did with the U.S. forces, Jason, I know it's really important for you that we cover kind of like the early game, the mid game, and the late game, those transitions, the decisions that the player is going to be making. So I imagine that's something that we're going to be talking about as we go through. So let me switch the scene here, so folks should be able to see this in just a moment as it pops up. There it is. Perfect. Right, so we have, Jason, your perspective here as the Wehrmacht, and Darren, aka Mirage Flaw, is playing as the U.S. forces. So Jason, is there anything that you want to kind of set up with this match before we really get into it?
Yeah. So to really, to those who've never played or seen anything about the Germans, um, when the Wehrmacht starts, they're a little bit slower than the Americans, and this is very much by design. Um, so as and there comes the Kettenkrad. So basically, their starting units are a little bit less powerful than the Americans up front, though they have a specific way of using them that makes them really powerful. But early on, you're trying to get early territory, you're trying to hold on, and you're trying to build up your forces because you can't get access to some of your most powerful units right out of the gate. While the American player gets access to very powerful his riflemen basically, which he's very happy on to use. So yeah, so as you can see here, I've opened up with a Kettenkrad and a Pioneer. The 3-man Pioneers are back, and they're a cheap capping engineer unit. And this time we have 6-man Grenadiers. Now, there's a lot of talk in terms of what this unit is. So basically, this is your mainline infantry, and we want it to represent the German infantry unit without any of the fancy other parts. This is your bread and butter of your early game. They're very good on the defensive, but they don't quite have the firepower of some of the other infantry units. So the Americans have their semi-auto Garands, and the Brits have their Enfields, but the Grenadiers just have their modest Kar 98s. So they're not quite as aggressive as the other infantry units, but as a 6-man squad, they are still very powerful.
Right.
And they have a lot of good utility abilities that we'll introduce as the game goes on.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to call out, folks probably noticed right away some obvious thematic improvements to the HUD since we looked at the U.S. forces last month. And we finally got in some of the theming that we wanted to add. Again, a lot of this was based on player feedback as well, so we greatly appreciate that. And we're starting to see the first engagement here with this poor Kettenkrad getting pummeled by these riflemen. Marco, what about you? And any sort of initial thoughts as we kind of get into this match here?
Yeah, sure. So besides the great improvements that you highlighted with the HUD, I think we should highlight how you want to play early game with the Wehrmacht, as Jason is doing. Definitely want your Kettenkrad to be away of the fight. So generally you would want it to move on the other side of the map, but we just lost it.
Don't worry about it. It lasted a little bit longer than Matt's Jeep, right?
That's true.
That's true. And keep the range with your Grenadiers. So ideally you want to fight long range like Jason is doing, and wait for your HMG to really make sure to protect your core points, and then when you are comfortable, start pushing the enemy with all your forces.
Gotcha. So, if I'm a new player, I've never played Company of Heroes before, or maybe it's been a while since I've played one of our past titles, and I'm playing Company of Heroes 3 for the first time. I'm jumping into a match with the Wehrmacht. What is something that you would want me to know as I hop into my first match here?
So I guess one of the first things is the Germans have access. So when you build your barracks building, you actually have access to more units than what the Americans do. So the Americans have to choose between the weapons support center and the barracks. So for the Germans, you have access to a sniper, a machine gun, and a mortar right away, as well with the Grenadier. And the Grenadier is meant to be a really good unit at supporting your more powerful team weapons. The Germans in general have more specialized units, but because there's more specialized, they are more powerful. So the MG42 team that I've built here is probably one of the best, if not the best, machine gun teams in the game, and you can build it right out of the gate. It'll suppress infantry, and it'll do pretty good damage to infantry as well. So it's a really good unit, and you want to be supporting this unit with your other units. And if you wanted, you could go the sniper instead.
Yeah. I guess since you mentioned it, we can actually look at the buildings right now really quickly. In the HQ, you can build the Pioneers, you can build the Kettenkrad, and that's obviously where you build out your other buildings. You have the medical station upgrade, the infantry company, you have Grenadiers, MG42, mortar, and sniper. Do you want to talk about transfer orders now, or do you want to save that for the next game?
for the next game.
Okay, we'll save it for the next game. And then in the tier 3 here, that's where we can unlock the Jaeger Squad, Scout Car, Flak 30. And then with an upgrade, we can get the Whirlwind and the Martyr. So now we're kind of getting into the, getting a little bit of action here. Jason, what is sort of your game plan right now? What are your thoughts as you're facing off against this U.S. player?
So, okay, so your game plan as the Germans is you always want to be getting into your better units. So the way that the tech works is that your tier 1 is modest, but it's also really good. But in general, it's a little bit defensive. But then you get to go into your tier 2. So I built the Luftwaffe tier 2 building, which gives me access to some more aggressive units. So this is the 221 Scout Car, which is an early light vehicle that I can get to start pushing around the riflemen and to basically start helping me attack the map. But as the German player, you always want to be looking to, what is kind of the more powerful units I'm aiming for? Because there's a lot to aim for. There's Jaegers, there's Panzer Grenadiers, there's the Wirbelwind, the Stug. There's a lot of good units for you to kind of want to get to. Because, again, your tier 1 is a little bit more modest than the other factions. But your tier 2 is also a little bit cheaper than the other factions, so you do get to it pretty well.
So it seems like, Darren has fairly decent map control. Yeah, he's kind of on the back foot a bit, but he's got victory points over on you right now. But you're definitely applying quite a bit of pressure across this entire map. So are you just trying to keep him off balance and trying to like force him to fight you in those frontal engagements, or what's the next step here?
So one of the things that we didn't, I think, was a little bit off camera there, but I caught 2 of his infantry units with the machine gun and forced them to retreat.
Right.
So that's kind of that. So while I say the German early game is a little defensive and a little bit modest, it really depends on how your skill, right? If you manage to outmaneuver his infantry with your machine gun, or vice versa, that's kind of determines who wins. So again, because I caught his riflemen out, I was able to force them to retreat, and that's when you saw me kind of attack his side of the map. And here he goes for a big flank, but I think I catch him with both the armored car and the machine gun, and I kind of shred this attack. So I'm again on the front foot again. Right. Even though it's early on, this is kind of the Americans' time to shine in a way, because I've shut him down with these units. I'm going to have a temporary power play.
Gotcha. So Marco, maybe this is a bit of a bigger question for you. But just like with the USF, the Wehrmacht have been covered in the franchise before. So I'm kind of curious what some of the major changes are that we're going to be seeing as the scout car gets chased away. Those poor pioneers. So what are some of the big changes with the Wehrmacht this time around? Is it mostly about their roster? Is it about buildings and teching, or is there something else here that's going on with the Wehrmacht that players should be aware of?
So definitely teching is a big part of how you play the faction. This time around, you have a different kind of approach to the way you tech up after your main initial building, your barracks, your tier 1, because you can choose one of the 2 other buildings that allow you to basically focus either on elite infantry that is better on long range, or elite infantry that is better on short range. So they are not like a progression tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but more like tier 1 and then 2 tier 2 options that the player can play around and choose the strategy. And we believe this is a great approach also for team games, because it allows you to really play different strategies and without having to rely on battle groups.
Oh, that must have hurt Jason, losing your scout card there.
Yeah.
I ran out of munitions, the Panzerfaust is there around the corner, and then it's like, oh no, now he hunts me. But yeah.
So going back to the point, in this game, for example, Jason went for the Luftwaffe company. So he's going to rely on Jaegers, our long-range specialists, which are very, very good squads. And he's also complement that strategy with Grenadiers with MP40s, thanks to his battle group. So he has a bit of everything right now.
Right. Did you want to cover the breakthrough battle group, Jason, since we're talking about it?
Yeah, so we'll get into more detail on this in the 2v2, but basically we made sure to build in a lot of different strategies for the German players through the Battlegroups. And one of the big ones in the breakthrough is the assault grenadiers. So the MP40s that I bought on the grenadiers is not actually part of the base faction. That is a doctrinal ability, and it allows my grenadiers to really start to punch the keep up with the riflemen as the game goes on. Because normally they can have a little bit of issue attacking riflemen because they're usually good at holding ground. But if you get the MP40s on them, they start to become a pretty powerful assault unit because they get assault grenadiers, or assault grenades, and they get pretty good damage. So, we'll talk about the other points in the breakthrough a little bit later when I get to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so looks like you finally got out your Flak 30.
Yeah.
I was saying to you right before we started broadcasting, I was like, I love this thing. It feels so strong right now. And it just feels like a very versatile unit. Obviously, it's slow. It's a crew weapon, but I feel like it just shreds.
Yes. And this is another thing. So, like, again, as you can see, some of my tier 2 units are coming online as the game is reaching the 10-12 minute phase. And this is the Flak 30, and this is a very powerful anti-infantry, anti-light weapon. So this is also fairly effective against light vehicles. It's not amazing against them, but it can kill them. But mostly this is a very powerful long-range anti-infantry unit, and you can see it in use here. It has a suppression ability that you can pay munitions to use, and oh boy, you can watch this one gun basically control this area against 3 whole American squads.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I just love it so much right now. So someone was asking in the chat about whether you can change the position of the global unit command, and yes, you can. So with a lot of our internal testing and whatnot, it's funny because even some of us diehard KOTU fans actually really enjoy the global unit command down here, sort of left of center at the bottom. But yes, you can toggle it to be up top right if you're more comfortable with where it was at in KOTU. So now it seems like you've got Mirage Flaw here on the back foot. What's your next decision point here? What's your next strategy?
I go for a big attack here. I'm confident. I just forced away 3 units with 1 unit, and I didn't even really take out all that much damage. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna see if I can fix Darren in place here, because I know if I sit on his cutoff, he needs to come and attack me, right? And that's what I want. So now I have my machine gun set up, I have my AA gun set up, and yeah, he has to come and attack me. As you can see, it'll be pretty difficult for him. And I get some good trades and some good fights in.
It seems like he's got a pretty substantial force that he's coming at you with, though.
Yep, but and I just used the merge right there. So Grenadiers now have the merge ability that those who played KOTU will recognize from the conscript squad. So Grenadiers are adept at just basically adapting to whatever squad they want to help. So you can move them over, and they can go and reinforce squads that are injured, and they will just basically reinforce the squad. So Mirage tries something cheeky here. He wants to go for the wipe on the weapon, but he just doesn't have enough.
Oh, just missed it. Too bad.
And he might lose the rifle.
Oh, and he smokes the machine gun.
Yeah, that's good. Probably kept that.
That was going to be my secondary trap. He like clears the machine gun or the AA gun, and then he gets caught by the machine gun after. But he does outplay me here a little.
I mean, it's very, very like tense back and forth, but it looks like you've got your Whirlwind out. So is this kind of a power spike for you right now, or
yes.
or do you, okay?
So now I'm getting some armor out, and Darren is definitely not prepared for this at this point. So again, once again, I kick him off the map, and as you can see, I'm really starting to get more and more control of the map. I now have 3 VPs. And I'm starting to encroach on his side of the map in terms of resources, and this is just the benefit of getting a lot of good trades. Darren's got a good play in at the final, like the last bit there, but it doesn't quite even out a lot of the trades that I got earlier on.
Right.
And the one thing I just wanted to quickly mention, so like So the tier 2 units I've gotten, just to review a little, is I've gotten the Jaegers out, I've gotten the AA gun out, I got the Scout Car earlier, and then now I have the Whirlwind, which is what we consider like a tier 2.5 unit. So in the tier 2, you have to buy an extra upgrade to unlock this unit. So it's a bit later. But
Right.
the thing I wanted to mention is most of my my hitting power came from these units. These are the units that kind of allowed me to up trade against the Americans and take temporary map control and start, pushing on the map. Because if they're in a scenario where they're strong, they are really strong. So like there was that case where the machine gun or where the scout car just shredded through the riflemen as they tried to flank. We had the case where the AA gun just shut down like a whole infantry attack. And now we have the Whirlwind that basically blunted his attempt to retake the map by basically just forcing off all his infantry.
Right. So Marco, what do you think Darren would have to do in this situation as the USF player to try and get a foothold again in this match and try and come back?
So I think right now, if you look at the match, Jason is in a very strong position, so it's going to be hard to recover. But if you look at how we describe the factions, like Wehrmacht is one of the factions that doesn't really need to flank you. They are strong when they are well positioned, and then they push you forward. They push you backwards. So one thing I think Darren should have done is actually trying to cap the sides of the map, trying to avoid the fight until he got a weapon to really stop the Whirlwind, like a Chaffee. And what he's doing pretty well, actually, is using the Scout Flare and the Smoke Grenade to really try to stop the HMG and to scout for where Jason has positioned his units. So right now what Darren needs is a bit more time and to prevent to be base pinned by that Whirlwind, either with the Chaffee or a T-gun, and try to cap the sides of the map. While right now I think that's Jason capturing the northern. So yeah.
And one thing I will say is that this build, as some may have noticed, is really good against infantry. I have a flak gun, I have a flak tank, right? Jaegers are also really good against infantry. And the only real anti-tank, dedicated anti-tank right now I have is the Panzer Shrek on the Jaegers, which is really good. But that's it. So the main weakness that Darren can exploit here is the lack of a dedicated heavy anti-tank. And that's actually an inherent weakness of this build that I've gone for. So the Luftwaffe building basically gives access to some of the more powerful anti-infantry units, and they're generally the more aggressive tier. That allows you to really get early game control, and it's really succeeded. Like this is an example of this strategy really succeeding. But its main weakness, and not to spoil too much, you'll see it a little bit later, is that it does struggle to deal with armor. Which is, yeah.
Right, but you did just pull out your Martyr, which is obviously a anti-tank vehicle. So what's your sort of game plan with the Martyr and the Whirlwind right now? Is it just to keep that pressure and hold the map, or are you trying to be a little more aggressive here?
So I'm trying to shore up my weaknesses here. As you can see there's a Chaffee, and really the only anti-tank I had to do with 2 light vehicles was just the Panzer Strike Jaeger, right? And so if he caught me in a bad spot or whatever, I could be in a really nasty spot. So I wanted to shore up my defenses here. Trying to poke at his...
Right. So while we watch this, I guess my other next big question is about teching. We've talked a little bit about it, but... Marco, how did the teching options for the Wehrmacht look this time around? You know, how am I kind of upgrading and progressing through my buildings, or how am I unlocking upgrades to ensure that I'm, staying ahead of my opponent?
So actually teching this time. Oh, actually, wait.
No.
There is a Whirlwind might go down.
I don't remember what
It might go down here.
Around the corner!
There is.
No!
Oh.
Lost it.
So as I was saying, he should have flanked in the north and trying to avoid fighting the whole army, and that's a good thing that Darren did, actually.
Yeah.
So very good from him. Going back to your question, so this time around we are bringing some flexibility so that after you tagged for your tier 1 and you build your tier 1, you can access either pretty much every other building. It really comes down to the amount of resources you've got. So you could potentially go tier 1 to tier 4 and build your tanks, but that's a big risk because you really need to like wait a lot of time before you would get that tank on the field. So if you're really having a great early game, then you might try to attempt that, but it's going to be a very risky strategy. Or what you can do is either getting your Luftwaffe company, which is the one that Jason used this game, or the mechanized one, which is the one that gives you the more like anti-tank, short-ranged weapons that you can use, and then decide to attack for your tier 4, which is actually the Panzer company, which is the one that Jason just got.
Mm-hmm.
So now that the Panzer Company is down, this is the final tier of the Germans, and this is where you get access to some of the most powerful units in the game. So if you could just go back to it, actually.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I just want to show off. Yeah. So now we have the Stoßtruppen, which is a really powerful late game infantry unit. We have the Panzer IV and the Brummbär, the assault tank. These are all very expensive, but also very, very powerful units. And hopefully I can show off some of their power as this game goes on. But one thing I actually wanted to quickly touch on is now, like, Darren's kind of smartened up a little in terms of not taking on my army in the open, in the like to the face in the southern front here, and he's moved a lot of his units up into the north, where there's a lot more shot blockers. The terrain isn't as open, and it's really not as conductive to my team weapon play. And as you can see, immediately I start suffering a lot of losses, and it's just more difficult for me to play because that kind of again, the Germans are very specific in what they're good at, and if you're able to create a scenario where they can't use their main strengths, then you gain a really large advantage, and that's how he's kind of pushed back into this game now.
Right. I just wanted to cover a couple player questions that we're seeing in Twitch chat. Jason, this one's for you about balance. This might be a bit of a tricky one, but will single player and multiplayer units be balanced the same, or will they be separate?
They will be. So right now we are doing our best to keep them as similar as possible, but they will have different too.
Okay, so it won't be like Code 2 where multiplayer balance will affect the single player, a couple
It
years.
won't break the single player experience. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Especially as the game gets older and older, I see the divergence growing larger.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there really isn't a big difference between single player and multiplayer, but I can imagine that growing larger as the game goes on.
Yeah. Another question was about the Pioneers with the smaller squad size. Do we feel that they're going to be less useful in combat? Or do we see them more as like the specialist and support role?
So they are much cheaper. So they're 125 manpower for those who don't know. So yes and no. They're less powerful than their 4-man Code 2 compatriots, but for their cost, they're quite good. They're a little trickier to use. But if you get them into the right spots against the right units, they will be pretty good.
Awesome. Some other really good questions here. Keep them coming, folks.
They have the amazing flamethrowers.
Yeah, those flamethrowers. Right, Marco, I know you wanted to talk about some of the Battlegroup hotkeys and maybe some of our decisions there. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, some players might have noticed it. But we have actually hotkeys also applied on Battlegroup abilities, which is something that our player base has requested for a long time now. So expect some news about the hotkeys, because I know that our players would like to get customizable hotkeys, and there are only good things coming for you.
Okay, that's good to hear. Trying to think if there's some other good questions here that I'm seeing in the chat.
I would also like to touch upon veterancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so also because this is, again, the third time we approach veterancy, so it's good to talk about.
Oh, that was nice.
There we go.
Shot.
So say hi to the Brummbär. As you can see, it's a dedicated anti-infantry unit. It is very expensive, but it is very devastating to anything it hits, really. It's not great against vehicles because it's a slow-moving shot, but if your tank isn't smart enough to move out of the way, you will suffer. So
Those are
yeah.
also light vehicles. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yes.
Sorry, Marco. Did you want to go back to talking about veterancy?
Absolutely, yes. So I will start talking about like the broader approach to veterancy this time. So we wanted to revisit some of our like Co-1 approach. So this time around, veterancy is going to be much harder to get, except for maybe the vet one, which is still like your main way to get your vet ability. But for the vet 2 and vet 3, you really have to sweat a lot. You really have to show that you are using your units the way they are supposed to. And that comes from many factors. So you can get veterancy from combat, from kills, and this time we are focusing our attention on kills. So you're still getting veterancy from damage, but we want you to get higher vets if you kill your opponent units, especially if you kill the whole squad.
Right. Sorry, no. I was going to ask because I think you briefly mentioned the veterancy upgrades that the Wehrmacht has in its buildings, but before we got distracted by the Brumbar, did you want to touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely, yes. So this time around, for Wehrmacht, each building has an upgrade that enhances the veterancy acquisition rate, and it gives the units for that building the vet one. So this is a sort of both veterancy, but it shouldn't be seen like the same kind of power level you get in Co-1, where you could basically, you had to choose, do I want to get, do I want to spend my resources on veterancy, or do I want to spend my resources on the attack building? This is mainly your way to get the immediate vet 1 ability. So there's not much in terms of power spike of the unit, of the stats, but it's more about the vet ability.
Right.
Chaffee.
Yeah, poor Chaffee is unexpectedly running into this Panzer. So Jason, I know that some players may be hesitant about something like purchasable veterancy. So I'm curious what like the balance or design decisions were around that, because on its face it might sound a little bit scary, or like, oh, they're making the same mistakes they made last time with some of these systems. But like, well, what's our approach this time around with how the system works, especially for the Wehrmacht?
Yeah. So if you click on one of the production buildings right now.
Can do.
Every building has what we're calling an officer quarters. If you buy this upgrade, what it does is that it upgrades all of the units that come from that building to Vet 1. So whether or not they're built already, or if you build new ones. So all past and present units. And then they also increase their veterancy earn rate by a percentage. So the goal here is basically a little bit of Co-1, where you can purchase your first level veterancy, which is really important because it gives you access to your veterancy ability, and it also jump starts your path to Vet 2 and Vet 3. But you can't buy the other tiers, unlike in Co-1. Mm-hmm. And kind of the goal here is that, as the German army, you can kind of field some veteran units. But to really get to the really, really powerful levels of veterancy, you still need to earn them in combat. And one of the reasons why we did it this way is we kind of wanted players to be able to invest very heavily into a tier. So, in this game, I actually didn't mention it, but I did buy the officer quarters for the tier 1 building, which allowed me to get Vet 1 Grenadiers, Vet 1 machine guns, and I have a Vet 3 Grenadier, and I had a Vet 3 machine gun for a moment there, but it got wiped.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So it looks like you're close to winning this, even though taking the significant losses throughout.
Yes and no. So here is actually, we were kind of talking about vets for the whole thing, but we did a lot of vehicle trading. We did a big fight in the middle there, and we traded a large part of armor. And again, the main weakness of the tier 2, the mid-game position that I went, is that my AT is just not good. I don't really have an AT gun. I don't have access to an AT gun either. So this Jaeger with the Panzer Shrek is kind of the best I have. So I'm very vulnerable to being overwhelmed by armor, and Darren finally built up enough armor to really kind of exploit that. And he's still kind of exploiting it, because every time he forces off my Jaegers with infantry, my Panzer IV, while very good, isn't exactly good enough to ford off multiple American armor units.
Right. And when you say you
punish me multiple times.
Yeah, when you say you don't have access to an AT gun, you mean you just didn't prioritize one earlier, right?
Right. Yeah. Sorry. So an AT gun is definitely in the faction. So if you want the other tier, that is a little bit more robust, I would say. It's not quite as aggressive, but it does give much better like later game options. You would have access to an anti-tank gun, but the Luftwaffe tier does not have it.
Gotcha.
But that's kind of the pros and cons of going this tier. Is again, you get a lot of powerful anti-infantry units, which allow you to really play aggressively early. But again, it does leave you vulnerable as the game goes on and your opponent accumulates vehicles, because it's not impossible. Because again, the Jaegers with the Panzerschreck are quite good against tanks, but they're not as good as, say, like if you got 2 AT guns out of the game.
Right.
And you can build Stugs out of the other tier as well, which is also a really reliable anti-tank vehicle, and I don't have access to that.
So I think you mentioned to me that this is kind of the point in the match where everyone ran out of steam.
yeah. Like I've killed most of Darren's infantry, and he's killed most of my vehicles. So we're both scrambling to get back on the field. So one of the units I do get here finally is the Stoßtruppen.
Right.
And oh boy, they do a lot of damage. They're actually akin to like the Obersoldaten from Go2. They're really powerful late game infantry, and they come with assault grenades and a white phosphorus smoke. They don't do anything against vehicles, so they're still weak. They're still vulnerable to vehicles. But against infantry, good luck. You need you need to bring several infantry units or some supporting fire to really deal with it.
Right. So Marco, I don't know if you have anything else to add about some of the late game decisions here, but like what do you think if I found myself in this position, like with most of my army being wiped and I need to secure the victory, my enemy has the victory points now, what do I need to do here?
I need to call a tiger.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what I think Jason is about to do.
Yes.
He's getting. I would like to touch upon actually 2 aspects of the game we haven't talked about. The first one is that we are going to have some quality of life improvements to the game in the form of auto-reinforce on your HQ. So, yes, give the tiger a few seconds to shine.
Say hi. This is the good old tiger. German fans rejoice. The Tiger 2 is here. So sorry. So this comes from the breakthrough battle group that I kind of had in the background here, and this is kind of my late game insurance here. And as you can see, I'm moving all of my units together in a tactical attack formation, otherwise known as a blob. But I'm concentrating on my force here because I know he has more units than me. But the tiger gives me the opportunity to really catch him off guard. So he just attacks me here, but he's attacking me from the front, and he's not going to have a good time because the tiger has some really good armor in the front, and you can just see those shells pinging off the front plate of the tiger. And the tiger gives me the cover to wipe all his infantry units under it, which allows me to actually get back in the game here. And yeah, I think this is a really close one, but yeah, I get the final shot there as well. So now I'm back in business. He almost had me dead to rights there, but now we still have a game to play.
So we can say that actually Jason pursued a strategy that allowed him to save enough So basically, all his early to mid game advantage was actually saved for this late game unit that allowed him to come back when
Gotcha.
he was on the losing feet. And I would like to touch upon the victory points, because we have made some substantial changes here to the way you actually win or lose a game. So this time around, we are speeding up the way you lose victory points when you have the advantage, or when you are on the back foot. So if you have the 3 VPs,
Oh, he flanks me
then you're
here.
gonna feel it.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, that's a big flank.
Uh-oh.
Oh, nice grenade.
3 riflemen from the flanks, killing my infantry. Oh no, my team weapons too.
That tiger might go down.
I don't actually remember what happens here.
Oh, I think it has enough HP to survive.
Oh no, he has a new Hellcat! Oh,
Uh-oh.
oh, that's a hit.
Maybe one more?
Oh.
One more to get it
Oh.
done? Do you think it'll happen?
Oh, it's a
bit
bust!
Oh, and the smoke.
Success.
Too funny.
That's all skill right there.
Yeah, very lucky bounce there right at the end. So one of the other questions I had, obviously we've shown quite a bit here in this first match, but Marco, what are some of the new ways to play that are going to be on offer for fans, you know, with the Wehrmacht and this faction? Like, what are some of the new things that we might be bringing to the table with this faction over Code 1 and Code 2?
So, well, you have seen some of the units. So, for example, the flag and
Oh.
oh,
Ah, damn it.
went down.
Yeah, you
But
got the
you
job
still
done.
Through the
killed so
front
many.
plate too. Jeez.
And we want to I want to call out this specifically. We want to prevent German players to just be able to, oh yeah, and no field immediately another tiger. So we are actually putting the cooldown starting from the moment you lose the tiger.
Gotcha.
I thought I could afford another one, but
Yeah. But it's actually a good quality of life change, because we want to make sure you can't just call tiger after tiger and just play with that. So yeah, in regards to units, I think we are going to see that also in the next game. We're really trying to use both the core armies and the battle groups to allow players to play very different strategies.
GG.
And GG. My favorite one is using the Luftwaffe battle group. I don't know if we will see that in the next game,
Yep.
but
Yeah. Sorry, a lot of that post match stuff. I didn't want to show that because a lot of that's work in progress still. Okay, that's awesome. So while we transition to the next match here, Jason, I'm wondering if you want to maybe talk about again, like maybe some of the decision points there for that match, and again, some of that typical flow that you might have in a 1v1, and how that might differ in some of our team games that are going to be coming up.
So yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what happened in that game. So early on, the Germans are a little bit more modest. They're not bad, but they're a little bit on the back foot.
Right.
And most importantly, they're relying on the machine gun, which has certain strengths and weaknesses. So if you can expose your enemy in the open, or like get them where you want them, you can overwhelm them, right? But especially early on, when you don't have as many units or as much vision of the map, it's harder. But as you go on and you get into your tier 2, you can start accumulating these really powerful units. And as you build more and more of them, they start to cover each other's weaknesses as well, and allows you to get some agency on the map and start forcing your opponent to do what you want to do.
Right.
And if you can successfully get him into the right place, you can basically overwhelm him with the superior firepower that the Germans have, which I think I kind of demonstrated in that game a little. And then you can then translate that into getting more powerful units that are in the late game of the German army. So whether that be through the Battlegroups, so the Tiger or the Panther, or just Panzer IVs and Brumbars, they're all good stuff. So that's kind of the general game plan in a 1v1. In the 2v2, there's more of a countering going on. You want to be basically looking at you want to be adapting to what your opponents are doing. Because while it's easier to get access to the more power units, So same goes for your opponent, and your opponent can also get the counters to your army in larger numbers as well. But it's still very much the similar flow. There's just a larger emphasis on adapting and countering to your opponent.
Gotcha. So Marco, I know one of the other things that you wanted to kind of shout out as I load up this next match here were some of the improvements, because the last time players had a chance to actually go hands-on with multiplayer was last December with just the U.S. forces and the Wehrmacht. So there's been a lot of changes since then, and I think you kind of wanted to talk a little bit more generally about just some of the aesthetic changes, graphical changes, audio changes, and again maybe some of the actual multiplayer game changes since then. So yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think compared to the last time our players could touch the multiplayer, the game has gone through a lot in terms of improvements.
Yeah.
Those that players will see from this stream will be mainly focused on the HUD, the graphics. I want to call out the graphics because it has really improved. I know that there is still a lot going on. But what we are focusing right now is we want units to really stand out. So we want to pursue unit clarity, and I think our graphic fidelity is really, really high. On very sunny maps, maybe this is less noticeable. But when you start playing on maps with like dusk or like different times of the day, you're really starting to notice the difference. And then another point I want to touch is I can't wait for you guys to experience the audio of the game, because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I know that we are focusing on our commentary right now, but the audio in the game is truly standing out, and it has improved a lot. And you can expect more improvements over time.
I think, Marco, you and I were actually in the studio yesterday, and we all got hauled into a room with the audio team to watch some matches with like the amazing audio surround sound system that they had in there, and it was just it was killer. I mean, and there's still like improvements that are being made there and things that are coming online. Yeah, here we are in our next match. This is obviously a 2v2. It's been a while since we've shown off a 2v2, I believe. Jason, this is your perspective in blue, I think.
I believe so.
And Marco, were you in yellow?
Yeah, most likely.
And then on the USF side, we also have Mirage Falah again, aka Darren, and some guy named John, because you needed another body to bully around in this match. So we're not going to focus on my play. We're just going to focus on your play. And we're not going to commentate on how I played this match. That's the deal that we're making right now. So Jason, approaching this 2v2 early game, what are some of your decision points here? Maybe Marco as well. What are you thinking about as you head into this match here?
Yeah. So I want to first point out I have gone for the Luftwaffe battle group, and to the astute viewers who saw the plane that pair-dropped at the very start of the game, this is basically a completely different way of playing the Germans. This is giving you access to Fallschirm Pioneers, which are pretty powerful early game infantry that also serve as engineers. So those who are looking for their powerful but squishy four-man squads from KO2, look no further than this, because this is how you get. This is a certain pattern of play that we're allowing players to do, and this is completely different from going your normal Grenadiers way.
Right, and the Fallschirm Pioneers actually cost like 0 command points, so you can pick them right away and like airdrop them on the other side of the map, which is a very, very fun way to throw off your opponent.
Yes, it allows you to also do some interesting things out on the map really early on.
Right. So Marco, what about you? What decisions are you kind of making over here? As I think you're facing up against
right
Darren.
now, I'm looking to. I spotted you actually in the northern side. So what I did was I'm trying to think about how can I flank you, and now I have like a very strong position. I went for the same battle group that Jason used last game, so I went for early MP40s, and as you can see, they are pretty powerful, especially in the short range. And now what I will do is actually, I think I'm going to use the two Grenadiers and the FMG to force you out of that position.
I think this is actually Darren. Yeah, because I think
actually that's Darren.
Yeah, I was playing against Jason and he was picking on me a lot. So we'll focus up here.
You must be right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jason obviously locked in the Luftwaffe battle group pretty quickly. Which battle group did you go for here, Marco?
I went for the Breakthrough, the one with the Tiger.
Yeah.
So we can actually quickly talk about the differences in the battle groups. So Jason picked a battle group that offers a lot of options in the early game, and it's more focused into your early to mid game power spikes, while mine offers a good early game option in the MP40s, but then it's more focused on getting you that late game heavy tank in the form of the Tiger. So they are pretty different.
Right. So I guess my question more broadly about battle groups is, we talked a lot about them with the U.S. forces on our last live stream. So I'm kind of curious, Jason, when approaching the design for the battle groups, especially with the Wehrmacht, or maybe just how do they differ between the factions, and how did we maybe approach the battle group design with the Wehrmacht in mind?
So one of the big goals, again, is of this whole game is diversity. So we definitely want to give players as many different play patterns as possible. And another thing about Germans or the battle groups is it allows players to kind of adapt to certain maps or certain play styles that they want to do. So as you can see with mine, it really allows you to play aggressively with infantry early. So I mentioned in the previous game that the normal tier 1 for for Germans is a little bit defensive, right? It's not bad, but it's modest. However, if you go this battle group, you can be like, no, I want to play very aggressive right out of the gate, and this allows you to do that. If you go other battle groups, for example, you can play a little bit slower in the early game, but get more power in the late game. Also, for example, this battle group has a big emphasis on defenses. Though my opponent here is doing a really good job of not letting me actually secure this part of the map. But this battle group also gives you access to emplacements. The flak gun, 2 centimeter flak gun, and also the 88, the legendary 88 anti-air gun, which can be really powerful, and you can really entrench in place with powerful infantry and good emplacements. If you go the other factions, you can get the other battle groups. You can get really powerful armor, and also some really powerful strikes as well.
And it looks like you're dropping your first Fallschirmjäger squad here as well.
Backing Marco up a little on his big attack in your center.
Sorry, Marco, I cut you off there.
Yeah, that all good. So touching up on that, I would like to highlight that there is a war going on between the two airborne battle groups, the Luftwaffe against the airborne battle group for the Americans. And I don't know if you noticed before, but you, John, used you paradrop your airborne squad to actually force Jason out of the south side of the map.
Again, I don't want to give myself credit. I'm pretty sure that was Darren that picked airborne and was making those smart plays. I think I went and mechanized for the Americans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
But still, it was a good play because you can actually use the fact that you can airdrop your units behind enemy lines to help you with a flanking maneuver. That's also a very viable strategy. Oh, those Fallschirmjägers may go down.
Yeah, they might go down.
No, I should be good.
They got away. All right. So we're 7 minutes in here. Jason, what are some of the decisions that you're making? Looks like you upgraded your Fallschirm Pioneers with the grenade launcher. What's your next power spike? What are you waiting for to sort of more pressure on the U.S. forces here?
So the power spike with the Jaegers is kind of what I was hoping to do a lot of damage with, but I'm just running into a lot of American infantry, and I'm not really getting as much success with machine gun. Darren's actually doing a really good job of flanking me this time, and just basically attacking me from all angles. So I'm a little bit on the back foot here, and it comes at a really nasty time too, because now is kind of when I need anti-tank, and again, we've done this pattern where if you specialize really heavily into anti-infantry, we generally make it so that you do have this weakness that you're exposed to vehicles. So if you look at my army right now on the bottom, I have basically no dedicated anti-tank. So I'm sweating a little. I'm debating whether or not to, like, okay, can I cheat a little bit more and get more anti-infantry and get back out on the map? Or no, do I need to play safe and get some anti-tank? And I don't really exactly remember what I do, but I think I am teching towards some kind of anti-tank option.
Gotcha. So when it comes to the battle groups, I'm kind of curious, how do the Wehrmacht battle groups complement the core roster that we've built out here? Like what are some of the gaps that we're hoping to fill with the battle groups?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like again, the allowing players to play aggressive when the core faction does not is one of the big ones. So again, the MP40s on the Grenadiers or the Fallship Pioneers allow you to play aggressive in the early game if you're not a fan of, like, defending with Grenadiers. Another option, and another thing with this emphasis is that you can play less with team weapons. The core faction has a big emphasis on using these powerful team weapons, but you don't have to use them.
Right.
You can invest your money into vehicles. For example, if you go to the mechanized battle group, you get access to half tracks and the Stug D, the short-barreled Stug, or the 8-Rat, which allows you a completely different way of playing the mid game. You can be like this mechanized, very mobile attack instead.
Mm-hmm. So Marco, you get out your whirlwind here. How's the fight kind of going on your side? What are you thinking about at this point in the match?
So I think this game, yeah, I went for a quick whirlwind because I noticed that there were mainly infantry units, that the focus on the American player was to get like the team weapons and the paratroopers, and the whirlwind is just the perfect answer to deal with that. And also, just to touch real quick about the topic before about the battle groups, I also think that in this game shows really well that Jason could use the Luftwaffe battle group to completely skip the Grenadiers and replace the mainline infantry with another unit, which is also an option that we are giving players.
I was very sad about this. I thought my AA half track would survive, but then the whirlwind kind of caught me off guard here.
Yeah, and if you notice, this game we are playing very different strategies. So I went for the first tier 2 option for my Luftwaffe company, and I'm getting the Jaegers, I'm getting the whirlwind, while Jason instead went for the Nebel Warfare, so some more indirect fire, and he's the one getting the Stugs. So he's the one helping me out with the to fight against the ATs, like vehicles and look at that. Just in time.
Just in time, yeah. The Stug to counter the Sherman. So when it comes to the
stay
battle
away
groups,
from the whirlwind, please.
yeah. So when it comes to the battle groups, I'm kind of curious, how do they compare to one another? Obviously, we've been talking about a lot of the options that they present to you, but what are some of the core strengths of each of these battle groups? Jason, maybe you can talk about the Luftwaffe battle group since you picked it, and then we can go through the others.
Yeah. So the Luftwaffe puts emphasis on some early game options, particularly around the infantry that it gives you, and it's just an infantry focused battle group. Infantry and defensive focus. So if you open up the tree again,
oh, sorry.
You can,
yep.
he immediately satchels the bunker. Goodbye. But yeah, so emphasis on infantry supported by basically powerful defenses, which are emplacements, and then some powerful airstrikes to give them some offensive striking power. So it's a pretty decently well-rounded battle group, but a little focused on the defense. The other two battle groups, so the mechanized is very much about changing your mid-game, having a really aggressive mid-game that allows you to basically kind of avoid some of the T-weapon reliance and just be really mobile and really aggressive. And then that's also the battle group with the super arty, if anyone remembers from the last video.
Right.
And then finally, we have the Breakthrough, which is the one I played last game with the MP40s, which is all that one I think is also probably one of the better, well-rounded battle groups as well. Gives you something nice early on with the MP40s on your Grenadiers. But it also gives you some economy options. So one of the picks that I didn't actually get was the supply truck, which allows you to lock down points and then actually increase your income from them. So on certain maps, it's really good for accelerating certain strategies. And then obviously all of that so that you can get to a late game timer.
I got it this game actually. So if you go check in the north, there should be one somewhere.
I don't think you have it yet. I think
Yeah, no, it's there. It's there.
You've got the
It's
mortar.
the munition bar.
Oh yes, there.
Oh, it's right there. Sorry.
You got the utility truck. Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up a bit the topic of defensive. Why Wehrmacht is the we named it to be that defensive faction. Well, if you check both the Fascist Pioneers and the Grenadiers, they're basically the only mainline infantry that can build sandbags, which gives them a unique way to play when you go capture points, because like pioneers or like engineers, you can build sandbags to help you out if you want, like if you're trying to capture a point that is close to the enemy. So in that first engagement, you might actually have the advantage because you are behind green cover and the enemy has not that cover and has to actually get close to you. And then we also have probably the widest variety of bunkers available. So you start with your concrete bunker, the basic bunker, like pretty much like in Core 1. And you have 3 upgrades available. Oh, look at these grades.
Oh, do you get it? Oh,
Close, very close.
Oh, wait, do you grade for this? Oh, God.
I tried to go for that, yeah. Hopefully this call will stay alive. So about bunkers, going back to that. So yes, you start with your concrete bunker and you can upgrade it to either an HMG, so it's like a very defensive bunker, or you can get a repair station. So very good if you want to play with vehicles and you don't want to necessarily use your pioneers to repair them. So you just go back to the repair bunker and you get repaired, and a medic bunker, which will heal your troops and collect casualties. So you can like make sure that your squads are healed when they are like, if you don't want to retreat to your base. And also we have a lot of like defensive weapons, like we talked about the HMG, we talked about the flag gun, the pack, all those weapons. We mention them as defensive because they are not really good if they fight alone. They need to be supported by other units.
The defensive nature comes very much from the fact that the German units, while very powerful in their respective roles, do have very clear weaknesses. And in general, the individual unit of the German army isn't as flexible as, say, the American. But that just means that as a collective, like Behemoth Steamroller, they're really good. So they are still very good on the attack, but it does take more of them to get going. And it takes a little bit more deliberation, a little bit more setup, or a little bit more planning to kind of get a really good offensive going with them. While as the American faction, most of your units are very good on the attack, just individually, and you kind of want to be having them come from different angles, taking different kinds of fights, and exploiting the weaknesses of the German units. And the more you can isolate them, the more you can break them apart into different fights, the easier it is to kind of exploit the weaknesses that these units have.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of victory points, it's fairly even. You know, the Wehrmacht have a bit of an advantage here. Again, what's sort of the next decision point for both of you here? And like, if you were playing as the USF, what would you say they would have to do to sort of like gain back their advantage that they had earlier?
Marco, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I feel right now the US players might identify that we are trying to consolidate the ground on the center and the north, which is basically opening up the flank for the south, which is actually what's happening, for the American player to be aggressive. So they could spearhead from the south and actually flank us to the center. So for the Americans, it's really now about to use their vehicles at their best and like get that window of opportunity for the Shermans and the Hellcat to shine and deal as much damage as possible. And for us instead, it's more about consolidating the ground and in my case to invest in either the tier 4 and the Panzers or go for the Tiger. Wait and go for the Tiger.
Right. What about you, Jason? What are you kind of thinking about now at this point? I was very cheeky and was able to destroy that armor, but your stug really scared me off there.
Yeah, so anti-tank is still the question of the day right now. I'm feeling really good anti-infantry wise because I have 2 Fallschirmjägers and I have a Nebelwerfer. So I'm feeling pretty good on the anti-infantry front. But I'm a little worried about armor here. I think I got a Panzer IV and it immediately died because right. So now I think I build the 88 here later on to kind of secure my setup.
Right. Marco, I think someone was asking about you were explaining the VP mechanic changes. Yeah. I'm not sure if you finished your thought there.
Yeah. So basically, to sum up the changes, the VP rate, so the time you see those victory points to be updated is no more 4 seconds, it's 3 seconds. And actually, it's really a minor change that matters only in one situation, when you triple cap your opponent, or if you are triple capped. So this time around, we wanted to, like, if you're able to get all the VPs on the map, we want players to be able to, like, really get the advantage there. It's hard to do, because, like, even in this case where we have good map control, we still don't have the 3 VPs, and the game is still fairly balanced. So in situations like either you have 2 VPs and the enemy has 1 VP, the game is going to last still a very long time, probably over 30-40 minutes.
Right.
But if you have a consistent advantage through the game, the game is going to end soon, which is actually what we want.
Right. So do you feel that that's going to help encourage like teamwork? Oh, that was devastating. Help encourage teamwork in some of the in some of the larger team games, and that like people maybe not necessarily be as focused on their own lane and are trying to actually capture all those victory points to get like collaboratively.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we are like as for everything, everything is still under work. So if we understand that this is a nice charge from the
run straight into a Panzer
from the bazooka team, but
yeah.
Trying to satchel my tank. Get out of here.
So actually, since you are touching upon that, 4 versus 4, 2 versus 3, like big team games are also an aspect that we evaluated when we thought about this change, because in those games sometimes if your team plays really well and you hold all the VPs, you still have to wait like quite a long time for the game to end. And we wanted to speed things up a little bit. We are also conscious that since we are using a different resource system compared to Company of Heroes 2, things might play differently in terms of like how you invest your resources into your units. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at the tank.
Yeah, I was just kind of zooming in to see like the difference between like a tank that's been on the field for a while, or a piece of armor that's been on the field for a while, and one that's kind of come out fresh, and that like they do pick up quite a bit of dust, a lot of dirt and grime, and they'll obviously take combat damage and all that kind of stuff as well, which is again a really cool feature.
If you look at the stug that I have, it's scorched from the rocket run that glanced off of it.
Right. Yeah. Very, very cool.
It has seen better days.
So it looks like the U.S. forces are kind of clawing their way back. Again, if you were the U.S. players here, what would be your next sort of plan of attack here to try and throw you both off your game?
So again, right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm securing the parts of the map that I've captured. So I tried doing that in the middle, and I kind of got beaten off by superior armor and powerful airstrike. So I'm looking to kind of recapture that. But like on the left, I'm starting to set up a really powerful defense. I have an 88 set up, and I have a machine gun, and I have the Kettenkrad acting as some recon. So I finally push up and capture the VP here. So basically, again, my game plan is very much capture territory when it's weak, and then also then secure it and dig in and let the Americans wear themselves out on me.
Oh, we can briefly talk about the upgrade that Jason just got for the side skirts. So there is a late game upgrade that you can get on your tier 4 and actually affects a lot of vehicles, a lot of tanks from the factions. And this time around, we as players might know, we don't have just the front and rear armor, we also have side armor. And those armored skirts are actually helping in that regard with side armor. So let's say that your opponent is able to flank you, the side armor is going to help you a little bit in regards and prevent all those shots to like penetrate. Oh, this is nice. We have a tiger facing the Hellcat.
Yeah, it looks like were able to get it out just in time. So you think this is gonna throw Darren on the back foot here and allow you to like just set up shop here on this side of the map?
It's definitely going to allow me to push a little bit. As you can see, I do have a repair bunker there. That is wait, actually that's probably destroyed.
I think that's destroyed now.
So yeah, as I told you, I've invested a lot on anti-infantry, and now the Tiger is just the perfect unit for me to complement my strategy. And so yeah, that's probably that's my final tier unit. And also I wanted to briefly go back to veterancy. If we look at the game right now, this is a scenario that a lot of Go2 players will feel unfamiliar with, because the majority of the units, basically almost all units in the game, are either Vet 1 or Vet 2. So just to reiterate that this time around, it's not every game you're eventually going to get every squad to Vet 3.
No.
Which means that we want to bring back the emphasis on if you are a good player and you do like a good play, you can get to Vet 3, and Vet 3 really matters in terms of how your units will perform. But you also still have to be very careful about that, so keep your units alive. Squad preservation is very, very important. And on top of that, I also want to say something about veterancy again. It's not so when your units have higher veterancy, maybe this is a bit of a nuance, but when your units have higher veterancy, the enemy can get more experience fighting you because they are fighting more experienced troops. So there is a sort of catch-up mechanic there to help out players not feeling overwhelmed by vetted squads. Oh, the Tiger might go down actually.
Yeah, that Hellcat's getting a little cheeky trying to get behind you, but yeah, it wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, it wasn't quite enough. I was able to use the road to help me out, backing a little bit. Roads do help you with acceleration and speed, so that actually helped me out.
Yeah. Another question I saw in the chat was another audio question. It was specifically about fun voice lines. You know, like when how you clicked on a unit over and over and over again, and they got annoyed with you. Are we gonna do stuff like that, or are there gonna be more rare voice lines that we hear, kind of Easter eggs, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. You can really have a lot of fun. I know there are some Easter eggs, but I'm not going to spoil anything. But yeah, we have various ways for units to interact with you. You have your intel, so there is a third-person voice talking to you about how the game's going, the tech. Then your units, so you can click on them, they reply to you. If you click on them too many times, they might get a bit upset. And when they get close to certain assets in the game, they might trigger unique voice lines. And when they are idle for a long time, they might trigger unique, very, very unique and rare voice lines. So we really want to bring back the uniqueness of our voices. I think this time, and I would like to emphasize it, we have so many more units, so many more actors, so many more voices than any other code game. We have so many more voice lines than anything you have experienced before. So I'm sure players will be pretty happy about that.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. So it looks like this match is about to ramp down. I feel bad. I let down Darren. I think I was an weight around his ankles. But yeah, GG. So
GG.
yeah, coming off of that game here, Jason, what were your big takeaways from that match in that TV2? Like how were you playing a little bit differently than in the first game that we saw? And what do you think sort of helped you and Marco secure that victory there? Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So I just wanted people to leave that these games with the idea that like the Germans are kind of this, heavyweight boxer that will punch you from the face or in the face from the front. Very much different from the more mobile Americans that we kind of described earlier. But at the same time, they don't have to play that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've built in a lot of through the battle groups, through different tech structures. There's still a lot of build variety as the Germans. So there's a lot to look forward to. You have really powerful specialist units, whether that be the more and more increasingly more powerful infantry that you can get as the Germans that none of the other factions do, whether that be the really powerful team weapons that you can specialize into, or the heavy armor that the Germans get. And they also have powerful upgrades in terms of their allowing them to get veterancy early, allowing you to really double down on a certain strategy or a certain tech structure, and really focus on getting your maximum power out of that. Right. So, yeah. So while we say, the units of the German army aren't quite as flexible as, say, like the American ones, the overall army, however, is very, very much able to do whatever you want to do. And we kind of showed it off, but we didn't really say it too much. But this army, the German army, also has access to pretty much everything. Like any kind of problem in their way, they can solve it with multiple solutions, whether it be flamethrowers, grenades, heavy armor, indirect, all that kind of thing. It's all built into the faction. So you have a lot of powerful units. You just have to be a little bit more careful in terms of what you get, and also very careful in terms of how you use them together. To all together create this heavyweight attacker / defender. That's a little bit more advanced, but also really rewarding to play.
Mm-hmm. So sorry, I did want to bring up this other question that I saw in the chat, because I think it's kind of important. The last time players played with the Wehrmacht in December of last year, we had the field marshal system, and now it looks like we've taken that out. So Jason, I'm wondering if you could address what we were trying to do there, and maybe why it's not present anymore.
So very broadly, we've integrated a lot of the elements of the field marshals into the base army. But yeah, we ended up not going with the field marshal system because we found, while it was really novel and really cool, there were a lot of significant issues with the system.
Right.
It caused a lot of different kinds of problems in terms of complexity, making the game harder to understand, especially as the opponent. And there was a lot of other issues with it. So we've kind of taken out a lot of the fun parts of the field marshal, and we kind of put it into the just the default army.
Mm-hmm.
I think the army right now is really solid and has basically everything it needs. And
yeah, and I think it's like one of those things. Anytime in development, we're always experimenting with new systems and new ideas, and those are always evolving as we go through the development process. Marco, I'm curious, what were some of your big takeaways from some of the matches that we watched there, and maybe what do you want to leave players with as we get closer to launch here?
Okay, so the big takeaways that I've seen is that in this game, I believe in the 2v2 especially, we played quite a lot together. We mixed our units. Jason helped me out in some moments. I helped him out in other moments. So it's really important when you play Wehrmacht in team games to really try to play together, because your units have weaknesses. Right. But if you do play well with your partner or your partners, you can actually completely remove those weaknesses because your units are really good to complement each other. So I really think that Wehrmacht will be a great faction in team games and not just 1 versus 1. And then another takeaway, actually, another thing I wanted to touch upon is that we have seen some of the deflections, misses So what we define as RNG. And I think it's a very big topic that we as designers, but also as players, have faced and dealt with for many, many years. We truly believe that RNG is part of the heart of this game, but it has to be really dealt with in a way that the player can feel always in control.
Right.
So Jason here, but also the other designers, me, Miguel, and everyone actually, we are very conscious that players should be consistently feeling in control of the action and that their units perform. So RNG is definitely going to be something much like lower in terms of impact than other games, especially compared to Code 1. And no crazy like things like airplanes that might kill your whole army. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Try to stay away from the stuff that's unfun for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that said, we are working on that with the community. So definitely we are all ears in terms of like feedback on how, based on this gameplay, if you see something off, just point it out and we can look at that.
Awesome. No, that's good to hear. So a bit of a longer stream, but I know we had a lot to cover there, folks. So really appreciate if you watched all the way through this. Again, if you want to stay up to date with everything that we are doing on Company of Heroes 3, be sure to follow us on your platform of choice at Company of Heroes. Join the Discord, discord.gg/Company of Heroes, and you can chat with us there. You can ask all your questions or start up a new thread. Follow us right here on Twitch or subscribe to us on YouTube at Company of Heroes, or sign up for co-development at companyofheroes.com so you can find out first when things are going to be happening. And you're also going to find our forums there if you have some really lengthy feedback that you want to leave us. So thank you so much, Jason and Marco, for joining me today. I know you're very, very busy getting the factions ready and all the balance tuned before we get to launch. So yeah, just any final thoughts before we depart here, Jason?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone play these armies, right?
Awesome. And what about you, Marco? Final thoughts before we say goodbye today?
Oh yeah. Really looking forward for the players to put their hands on the game again. And I would like to do 3 shout-outs if I can.
Sure.
Shout out to all our dev team, because
Absolutely.
we have an amazing dev team on every department. We have true stars that are working on the game. Like when you are in the community, you really can't see that, but there are people that really do super complex things to make the game play well and look well. And then shout out to our community, because they are amazing. I've been part of the community for most of my time, and I want to thank the community, because I think being part of the community actually helped me having this unique chance to come at Relic at some point. And a special shout out to all the Italian community as well, because I'm Italian, and this game is based in Italy.
Awesome. Well, we'll really appreciate it. Folks, we've got so much more coming up. We still need to look at the British forces. We still need to look at the Deutsche Afrika Corps. And of course, we're getting really, really excited for launch in February. As we mentioned before, we want to do some sort of multiplayer test before then. So stay tuned for more news on that. So much more to come. So thank you, Jason. Thank you, Marco. And thank you to everyone that tuned in live or everyone that's watching this after the fact. And we will see you next time. So take care, and we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.